age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled, our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Can somebody give me a quick shout out in the chat just to make sure that I am live and you can hear me? Because I'm always, as I say, always suspect whether or not I'm actually live because, I have, as I said many times, Amish levels of technical skill. So if someone could just give me a shout out in the chat, that would be great. Sounds good. Oh, great, Sound Engraver. Thank you. I'll just see who is here. Greg is here. Private Eye is here. Sound Engraver is here. George is here. How's everybody doing? Jay stopped in for a minute. Vaz is here. Michael is here. Manny is here. Honduran is here. All right. Nice to see familiar faces in the chat. So, for anybody who is new or watching this while we are not live, basically what I do is I'm going to talk a little bit about some basic fundamentals of making great comics and making comics fun again. And after I do that for, about 15 minutes, then I'm going to just go through the chat and answer anybody's questions that they have, any questions at all on the stuff I have to talk about tonight or my books. Links for my books, by the way, are in the description. There are 2 superhero graphic novels and 1 fantasy graphic novel. And besides that, you can ask me about any of my videos, anything at all. Just make sure, if you can, to put a question mark and possibly tag me in your questions so that I can know that it's for me, because there are a lot of times where there's crosstalk in the chat and I'm not entirely sure whether questions are for me or not. And also, I have to apologize right up front. I was apologize for being a couple of minutes late. I was on John's Long Box doing comic book team up, and we had a great guest there. And you should go over and check out John's comic book team up. Beautiful art. We were talking about some fun things about Mickey Mouse, about Spider-Man and Deadpool. But apologize because of the sound quality. I have somewhere in this room where I record, somewhere there is a cricket in here, and I cannot find him, and he is driving me insane. But if you hear chirping, you're not going crazy. That's probably coming through the microphone. Anyways, what I wanted to talk about tonight is the fact that someone actually told me about this after I had discovered it. I just found it through comic book, or not, the Internet Archives. Let me see if I can share a screen here. 1 second. I will bring it up. But the Comic Artist Kit right here. We'll start. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. So this is a kit that was put out by Disney. I'm not entirely sure what year it was put out. Let me see if there is something in the preamble here about when it came out. Doesn't 19? No. This fellow is talking about his interactions with it in 1975. So this is fairly old. But the thing is that these are the fundamentals of comic strips. And When I ran across this a while ago, I said, I got to do a video on this at some point because, again, we need to get back to the fundamentals. And the fundamentals are not only of, of superhero comics, but fundamentals of comics in general. And this is just a dozen pages of the fundamentals that were given to Disney employees back in probably the 50s or the 60s when they were talking about how do you make a good comic strip. And one of the things I always find fascinating about learning about the history of comics is just how many great comic artists have worked as cartoonists. Well, I mean, comics really are a part of cartooning when it originally came out. That's what it was. But how many artists actually worked on cartoons or on comic strips that were cartoons like Walt Disney? I mean, Jack Kirby worked on Popeye. He did, frames and frames and frames just as turning them out as one of a number of people doing, stills which get turned into animation for Popeye the Sailor Man. And, he just didn't want to do it anymore because it was too repetitive. That's why we got the great work from Jack Kirby that we see within comics history today. But there are so many people of that kind of stripe. And I'm always talking about Will Eisner as well, because Will Eisner always fancied himself a cartoonist. That was it. He didn't think of himself as a comic book artist in any way. He always called himself a cartoonist. But anyways, let's look at some of the fundamentals of cartooning and the comic strip here, according to 1950s, 1960s Walt Disney, when, that actually meant something in America. And I just want to talk about these things, these basic things for a little bit, because again, I'm someone who, again, I have 3 books out now. I got another 4 in the works, and I'm still learning the fundamentals, unfortunately, of comic book making. I wish I knew them all by now, but I don't. I try my best to do what I can to learn continually. If we had a functioning, good comic book system with actual comic book artists and editors and everything else, they would pass this knowledge down to other people, but we don't have that. So a lot of people like myself have to learn it as we go. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of indie comic producers out there, and probably through no fault of their own, they just don't understand the fundamentals. That might be beautiful artists, they might actually have some merit in their storytelling, but there are some fundamentals that they just don't get. They just don't understand because they've never been exposed to it and they've never been taught. And again, I'm one of those people. So, I'm not casting stones at anybody, but let's go over some of these fundamentals here and just talk about the beauty of comics for a few minutes. So here we have Goofy and Mickey Mouse, of course. I have read this a long time ago, so you'll have to give me a moment. And you even got notes in the margins, if you can see that. I'm not entirely sure. Let me zoom in a little bit more here for you. Let's see. Common problems that occur in comic panel design, page 1. These may be dumb, but I made these mistakes for years. Again, this is the exact thing I'm talking about right here. I mean, this person saying, yeah, these are dumb mistakes. And of course, when I point them out, anybody points them out, you say, yeah, they're dumb mistakes. I would never make that mistake. But you have professionals, and this guy, professional, 4 years working for Disney, and just kept on making those mistakes. So number 1 is artists begin by drawing in the characters because that's the fun part. And oops, what happens? There's no room for the dialogue. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So that's number 1. And number 2, cutting off feet. That's a no-no. Number 3, chopping off heads, hats, or ears. That's one I did know about from what is it? It's how to make comics the Marvel way. Definitely goes over that. Don't use balloons as hats. Don't put them over top of your characters' heads so that they just obscure everything. But I never even thought about it. Cutting off feet. It does kind of, let's say, skew your panel design a little bit. And again, I will take this as hearty advice from people who actually know what they're talking about and worked in comics for years and years, worked in comic strips at the very least for years and years. Something simple to make your comics better. I mean, maybe you're Rob Liefeld and don't like to draw feet. Too bad. Learn. Let's see. And the thing is, again, I don't. Again, I'm scraping by. I'm trying to make comics as best I can, and I do make a fair chunk of change with my comics, but I'm still not making enough so that I can hire extra people like creative editors that can tell me all of these things. So I have to do that bit myself. I know that it would be better if I had the money to do it otherwise, but again, I don't. And some of these things are just fundamentals that I never even think of. I do think of things like tangent lines and continuity and all that kinds of stuff, but these are some fundamentals that, again, would never have crossed my mind. Some of them, again, overcrowding, working conditions, which is to say that your balloons are just making sure everybody's bent over, and open wide spaces, again, when you don't need them, and you just have blank spaces in the background. Again, unless it's for drama, unless it's for negative space, then yeah, you have a problem. Let's move on to page 2. Here's his solutions. Begin by indicating text and speech balloons in blue pencil. Okay, I'll have to say right here, this is actually something which is a bit different than what you would get with the Marvel method. And I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, um, John over John's Longbox actually interviewed for at least an hour, was J JM DeMatteis, and he was talking about what the actual Marvel method was. He says there's so many misconceptions out there about what the actual Marvel method was, that he went through the steps of, okay, this is actually what it was. And the thing being that you could actually just get either very slim dialogue with your descriptions, which would then be either written or rewritten. So, it depends on the method that you're going to use, but let's go with the Disney method that they're using here. So it begins with the balloons, and we're talking about tracing paper because, again, this is back in the 50s and 60s, where you could do this all digitally today. So do your rough sketch on a separate piece of tracing paper and then overlap the two of them to make sure everything will fit. And he talks here again about tangent lines. Tangents may occur at this step. Again, you want your tangent lines to be out of there to make sure that you don't have things intersecting where they should not intersect, because that will draw the eye of your reader to sections of your page which are not meant to be noticeable. So that's one of the things as well, that one of the things I'm always looking out for, but I need to pay more attention to. And number 3, he places his rough sketch over the final panel, traces the rough in blue pencil, adjusting the portions, correcting tangents, and refining the line as you go. Draw over the clean blue sketch with lead pencil. So again, the fun thing is the fact that right now I do work with artists that work exclusively on paper and pencil, right now, like Mike Gustovich, and I have some artists like Renzo Rodriguez who do both. Every once in a while, he goes back to pencil and paper, because he wants to get a more, I don't know, grounded feel to his page every once in a while, but he does work digitally most of the time. And other artists, I do believe that Nick Axe does the same thing as well, sometimes going back to pencil and paper. But the thing is that if you're working digitally, this would be much easier. You could do this much easier and recorrect all of these things very quickly, but you just have to know enough to actually look for them. Also, let's go on to page 3. Let's see. This is what is called a wooden character. Each eye, each ear, arm, hand, finger, leg, collar, shoe, etc. looks the same as its counterpart. The result is a very stiff looking pose. What you're supposed to do is to take the Mickey on the right hand side. This character looks more naturally simple because each part of the body varies in some way from the corresponding opposite part. Eyes in perspective, fingers that vary and give the hand a more dynamic look. And here's again something I had never thought about. Why? Because what you get on the left is what you see a lot of the time. Even with Disney and people who, again, would be given this stuff, you see that a lot. And the fact that you actually have fingers that all move in different directions whenever you're drawing a panel, yeah, that does give a more dynamic look to the entire thing. I never even considered that because again, I'm not the artist, I'm the writer. But the fact that I'm the one who's supposed to okay all of the art before the inking starts, these are some of the things that need to be fundamentals that we need to get back to. And I'm sure at some point there's somebody who's going to say, I want to do comics, but I'm not a very good artist and I'm not a very good writer, and I can become an editor. And if someone, it's like oh Joe from over, if you know Michael Bancroft's channel, we used to do late night with Comicsgate over there a long time ago with Joe. But Joe actually does this as well. He does some editing in this vein. So the more we get people like that, I think the more we're going to grow as indie artists and indie books and things like that. Also, he goes on to say, when characters appear together in a group, the group looks more interesting when each character's body parts differ from the corresponding parts of the other characters. Compare this concept of Huey, Dewey, and Louie on the top with this concept where all the body parts are the same. Again, it is something that the bottom picture is something that you would see over and over again in cartoons and in comic books, in a lot of things. And it's something that is not out of the ordinary, but that's not to say that it's the good way to do things. Not to say it's the right way to do things. The top picture of Huey, Dewey, and Louie actually looks much more dynamic. I completely agree. And so that's what you need. And I love the fact that he talks about here on the right-hand side, using a straight line of action. And I know I've always tried to, after talking to Mike Barron, probably about 2 years ago now, Mike gave me the advice. He said, listen, you're a writer, but you need to be able to, at the very least, sketch out some panels. You have to have that amount of skill at the very least in order to try and get your artist some idea. If you can't, give him enough idea through the verbal, then you got a problem. And the fact that you might be able to do it in a sketch much easier, much faster, is something you need to learn. And I take that advice from Mike Barron to heart. So this is something, because it deals with sketches. This is something that is a lifesaver, talking about through lines and the difference of through lines of action, which it gives many different examples of here. It works a lot better with cartoons, I think, than it does with your comic book figures. I won't say illustration figures because they're different from comic books. Comic book figures are basically halfway between illustrations and cartoons, if you ask me. Good and traditional ways of doing comic books, not what you get with most of the big two today. Also, here's a trick and tip, one of the ones that I learned from Renzo as well. He does this all the time. He says, many people, when drawing a freehand circle, make the vertical diameter smaller than the horizontal diameter. This is easy to see by tilting the drawing 90 degrees, then making a slight correction. And again, this is something, again, working with Renzo Rodriguez, he says he does this all the time to make sure everything is correct and to make sure he's not missing anything, because you're working on a piece, and especially if you're working digitally, you zoom in and you zoom in and you're working on something and you're filling in spaces and you're so close to the thing. Sometimes you don't see the forest for the trees. You're working with the picture so long, you don't see your own mistakes. And what he does, again, is to flip the entire thing every once in a while to make sure everything is correct. And the reason I learned about it was because he sent me pages a long time ago when we were doing Thomas Valiant #1, and he sent me, I think it was upside down backward pages. I'm going, Renzo, what's going on here? So you have to explain the entire thing to me. But yes, let's see what Donald has to say here. He says, in order to avoid making a panel bottom heavy or leaving empty spaces in the composition, turn the drawing upside down to make these things more visible. Yeah, again, if you're not going to be using negative spaces, which you can do in really good comics or silent comics or things like that, and you want to leave just the right amount of space, this is a great trick. Also, he says, to make characters relate to the background, always build the environment first, then place the character. And this, again, is something that is not done by many comic book artists that are doing indie stuff right now in the same, I'll say, sphere that I am, is to build the background first. Because one of the things that Will Eisner always talks about, and many of the people who laud Will Eisner is the fact that he gives weight to everything. And he does. He gives weight to body proportions. He gives weight to clothes. He gives weight to everything. And he does so in a way which draws the mind into thinking that this is a real situation and a real character. And that's exactly what we're talking about. And we're talking about Goofy here. We're talking about Goofy. And they're saying you need to relate the character to the environment. And therefore, what he's basically saying is the same thing as Will Eisner. Give your character weight. Have him sink into the picture rather than drawing the picture around him where he looks like he's the only thing there and he's floating in the middle of an illustration. And then he goes on to say, do the same with props that the characters are involved with, like horses, bikes, cars, boats, etc. I love the fact they say horses. It just reminds me of the research I used to do a long time ago when I used to do legal research. And when you get into the property end of it, you would very often look at these old descriptions and old deeds and saying, giving rights away to horses and buggies and all that kinds of that's what it reminds me of. But anyways, yeah, again, talking about giving weight to your pictures. Let's see, what else did he go on to page 5? Thumbnail sketches. Thumbnail sketches help you to think out all kinds of drawing problems before starting your rough drawing. Work out a difficult pose. Make several very quick, small sketches without details. This saves you a lot of time in the long run. Again, these are basics that I'm sure most comic book artists would already know, but it's something that people, again, like me, writers, need to become more and more in tune with so that you can describe things better and make your panel flow better. He also says, number 2 in his thumbnail sketches, special facial expressions can be thought out with thumbnail sketches, which is again a great idea, and which again is something that we do, Renzo and I especially, but some of the other artists as well. He always does character sketches, multiple character sketches, before we start a new character and things like that, so that we can have the entire thing down pat in our minds. Number 3, he says, use thumbnail sketches to experiment with perspective and large panel layout, which again is something, if you were writing the comic and drawing it yourself, this would be much more helpful, but I'll have to use it as a writer simply to be aware of what my artist needs. And number 4, he says, incidental characters should be designed and things like proportions, costume details, etc., worked out before they are incorporated into the story. Again, yeah, we always do this. Renzo and I always do this. We give every character that is going to have any recurring time on the page at all a set design. And again, it's something that sounds fundamental. It's something that sounds very simple, but I think it's something that a lot of people are skipping out on. And you see it within the indie comics, the crowdfunded comics that you see right now, is some of these steps going by the wayside. And it's unfortunate. Let's see. Page 6 talks about staging. The page is more interesting to look at when it contains several different kinds of staging. So you got a long shot, a medium shot, and an action shot, and a close-up all at the same time. And again, this is something that I try and do with my pages all the time, because I do a full script for most of my artists. And the thing is that I always start with what kind of shot it is. I just got pages back from my artist for Fade to Blue, which is the digital comic that I will be coming out with soon. We already have issue 1 done. Issue 1 we're in the middle of working on. They're only 24 pages long. Let's see. I think he has 24 pages, but excuse me. We have a page which is basically exposition. So the way that I wanted to structure it was, we have ruins in the background, and these are smoking, burning ruins of something that happened in a previous chapter, and you get closer and closer as you go in with the panels. Even that does not have the dynamism as what we got here with Uncle Scrooge and Huey, Dewey, and Louie, because you see the long shot and then a medium shot and then a close-up and then back to an action shot. There's a lot more dynamic quality to pages when you think about them in those ways. And here's something that I also like to really watch breakdowns of what is it, movie scenes, especially iconic movie scenes and iconic movies. There was one that I ran across just a couple of months ago where they were talking about Indiana Jones, the first Indiana Jones movie, and what the masterful cinematography and directing had put into every shot and break it down to see exactly what's going on. And one of the things I incorporated it right into what I was doing because what was it? Which book was it? Oh yeah, right. Thomas Valiant #2, which again Renzo and I are working on right now. There was a page where you had two characters who are basically meeting each other for the first time, and there was a lot of different kinds of dynamic shots. But at the same time, one of the things I learned from the film study that I ran across was the fact that intersperse it with details of actions that are outside of the view of the actual characters at that time to build suspense, all that kind of thing. So there's a lot you can do with this. The staging has so many applications, especially when you're doing a comic book, because again, you have panel after panel after panel, and it's essential. It's something that everybody needs to brush up on and become better at, myself included again. So it says also staging would always be functional too. The function of a long shot is to establish where the scene takes place. A medium shot is used to show an exchange of dialogues or actions between characters. A close up is used to emphasize the expression or speech of the character. Extreme action is best illustrated by minimizing background elements and other things that would draw attention away from the action. So again, these uh, these are fundamentals of doing a good comic. These are something that everybody needs to brush up on, because again, we have the picture of Goofy here. This is something I had never really thought about. I think about it when I do my own books, but when I'm looking at other people's books, and it's something that unfortunately, again, if you go to mainstream comics right now, is just completely run through. You see the picture on the right with Goofy, which is not a good action shot, because you want to move to the one on the left of extreme action, because it says, as it says, best illustration extreme action is best illustrated by minimizing background elements and other things that would draw the attention away from the action. And I actually came across, when I was listening to all of the Marvel podcasts, them talking about the exact thing. Then they're doing it in the exact wrong way. And these people now work for Disney, because Marvel is owned by Disney, but they're talking about, oh yeah, you have to pull it back in order to show all of these tiny little knickknacks in the background to give the reader some idea of the lifestyle of this character, not just the action that's going on. I'm thinking to myself, you people are crazy. That is exactly what doesn't need to be there. But anyways, and these are the fundamentals. These are the fundamentals that they don't even follow within Marvel Comics right now, because that was a Marvel Comics podcast. But the thing that I wanted to also bring up here is the fact that, yeah, you don't just go through the staging with the close-ups and the different kinds of staging for your panels for, I don't know, for just because. You have to have functionality, and functionality is number one. Again, this is the thing I'm always talking about with merit-based comics. Functionality is what draws the reader into making them think about um, good storytelling, and to take the story in without you drawing them out of the book to begin with. Also, it talks about perspective here in staging on page 7. Using a downshot high horizon can cause problems. Uninteresting or empty spaces versus greater difficulty in drawing rectangles and circles in perspective. So it also talks about character sizes in relationship is more difficult. And the second picture here that we have with Goofy and Mickey, it says, here are the same characters set against a low horizon. And then it goes to the final panel and says, downshots should be used when there are interesting or important things to look down at, which is exactly what I'm always trying to do. But again, this just hammered it home. These are things that I thought to myself, okay, when I was, drawing on what experience I could to create the script so that I could give it to, let's say, Renzo for Thomas Valiant #2, or the Redemption of Kit Fox, whatever we're working on, to make sure that not only we have good perspective, and I'm always saying, where my view, downshot, all these kinds of things, change perspective, all that kind of thing. But again, your perspective has to have as it says up here, has to have a function. And that function needs to be there, because if you're going to have a downshot and there's no function to it, you're going to have an uninteresting panel, which is going to bore the reader, or it's going to give your artists more difficult proportions of things than actually need to be there. All that kind of stuff. Again, the great thing about merit-based systems is the fact that what you're doing is not only making something more interesting, you're not just giving the reader exactly what they need in order to understand the story, you're making things easier for yourself and your artist, if you're working with an artist who's separate than you, so that you can make these panels not only quicker, but also more functional from a design perspective of what the artist needs to think about in their head. So very, very important, just simple things. And we're getting to the bottom here. It also says, by using a low horizon, many perspective problems are illuminated because things are viewed head on. Maximum use of space on the left, where it says on the right, greater feeling of depth. So again, here we have the end of these 7 pages of the fundamentals. What does it say? Not the fundamentals. The common problems that occur in comic panel design, and it is part of the comic strip artist's kit. And I would suggest that everyone go to the the Internet Archives and look this up if you want to make comic books. And just read this like maybe once a year, maybe not once every 6 months, and to make sure that you understand these fundamentals, and you make sure that, again, think about finger placement and not making things look wooden, and functionality and character design, besides the fact the staging and how you make panels interesting, how you decrease clutter, how you work in a more functional way to help the artist, all these kinds of things. This is what we need to start at. Many people, again, it says, what does it say up here? At the very, very beginning, it says, what does it say? Artists begin by drawing in characters because that's the fun part. So yeah, we've all started, if you're like me, and I'm talking about we as in people who do crowdfunded comics, we all started with the fun part. We all started with the fun part, saying, I want to make a comic. I think I can make a comic. Let's see what I can do. And if you're still around now, still making comics, then you got to get to a point where it's okay, sorry, but we have to take a step back and not start at the fun part anymore. We have to start at functionality. We have to start at design. We have to start at, what is my reader going to need in order to understand this better? And that's how we build a merit-based system, and that's how we become better at making great comics. Anyways, I've been talking for 33 minutes. Wow. There's actually more of these. There's a couple of different ones. This one is for the comic strip artist kit. Disney also put out, I think it was the same artist, put out one for making figures and making toys and things like that. And it does have also a few different ideas in it that would be applicable to some of the stuff that you would do within comic book making as well. But I'm only going to go over this one today. I might go over the other ones later, or bits of the other ones. But again, I just love learning about the history of comics. Quite honestly, to me, this is fun. To me, this is beautiful. And it's something that I just want to learn more and more about, and hopefully become a better storyteller because of it. So let's see who is here and go through the chat, see what questions anybody has for me or for anything about my channel. Let's see. I already said hello to Greg, Private Eye. How you doing? Let's see. Sound Engraver is here. George is here. Jay the Beast showed up. Vaz is here. Let's see. Vaz says, RJ, you should read some of Don Rosa's duck stories. Okay. I will take that into consideration. Michael is here. Let's see. Manny is here. Honduran is here. Who else we got? Samuel is here. Tony is here. Let's see. Let's see. Tony has a question. He says, RJ, what are your thoughts on your boy Zach's meltdown? I don't know much about Zach's meltdown, quite honestly, because I kind of tuned out on his videos for a little while just because, when it started, it was like, yeah, there's nothing here information wise that I can use. I'm sorry, but uh, I am very, um, I don't know, mercenary in the way that I do things sometimes. And I don't watch YouTube videos unless I can actually glean some bit of information out of that. I want to learn. I'm someone who constantly wants to learn. If I can't learn something from your video, if you're just saying the same thing over and over again to, let's say, make people upset in some way or things like that, then yeah, I don't watch your videos. That's part of the reason why there are some people within, again, even Comicsgate and Comicsgate adjacent that I just don't listen to because there's no new information there. Anyways, let's see what else we got here. Samuel says, playing Middle Earth Shadow of War while listening to this. Very good. Very good. Let's see. Scrolling down. George brings up a interesting point, which I'm not sure this is for me, but he says, anyone else find it funny that Captain Marvel, She-Hulk, and Spider-Woman all got canceled this month at issue number 10? No, I don't find it funny at all. They can't do, what is it? We'll say old 80s comics. 12 issues is a maxi series. 4 issues is a mini series. So they can't even get to the length of a maxi series. It's pathetic. But again, part of the reason is because they don't know the fundamentals. They just don't. And part of the reason why they don't know the fundamentals, even though they work for Disney, is because they don't care to know them. They don't care about the medium. They just don't. Let's see. Scrolling down. Zach Dan is here. He says he came in from John's long box. I see. Very good. I take it John has got to go to bed, although he's not working right now because he literally broke his neck. So, and he's a construction worker. So hopefully John is going to be back on his feet soon enough. Let's see. Scrolling down. Tony says, RJ, what are your thoughts on the Roy Thomas Wolverine situation? Now, I listened to Wes over at Thinking Critical about this, and Wes does not like Roy Thomas, what he's doing at all. I can just tell you that right off the bat. I have an immense respect for Roy Thomas. I don't think he's right in this instance at all. I really don't. I can see possibly where he's coming from because he is one of those guys who has worked in comics and struggled in comics and has put in the effort for decades upon decades, and he's nowhere even close to being, I think, as financially stable as a lot of these 90s guys that he, taught how to make comics, basically. So, I can see where he's trying to get himself a little bit of a leg up, trying to get some money on some properties that he is connected to because he thinks that, he needs some money coming in, and he's getting older. He's getting a lot older. But the thing is, again, I don't think he's right in this situation. What he's going to do about that in his situation in life, I don't know. But I have tremendous respect for Roy Thomas. And I will, out of that respect, give him a pass here in the fact that, this hopefully will not continue. Honestly, it's not going to continue for long because I don't think Roy Thomas has that much longer left. Unfortunately, he's one of the great storytellers of the 70s and 80s. Let's see, scrolling down. Let's see. Oh, very good. 20th century time traveler, 21st century time traveler. I apologize. 21st century says, I still have my Easy Way to Draw book by Walter Lantz with Woody Woodpecker on the cover. Yeah. See, fundamentals. Yeah. Fundamentals is what we all need. Honduran says, I heard the cricket. Yeah, I hear him now too. If I could squash him, I would. I definitely would. John was saying, that's your conscience. He's telling you, you got to give me some more. John thinks my conscience is poking me that, I need to talk about his book a little more, I think. maybe not. But no, I would squish that cricket if I wish. If I wish I could. Let's see. Oh yeah, Baz is saying the same thing. Baz says talking about Disney, so it needed a Jiminy Cricket in the background. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. George says, look at that background. Furniture, drapes, rugs, footstools, and TV. Let's go to the background. I want to go to there just for a minute. All right, all right, all right. Where's Goofy? Let's see. Scrolling down, scrolling down. There's Goofy. We'll put him in the background. So drapes, rugs, footstool, and a TV. You barely see that anymore. It's always just a background of blank color. I love Goofy, by the way. I always, I always think of that cartoon that they did where he was fat. You know, the one that they could never make today because he's trying to get skinny. And his reflection keeps on calling him fat. That's what he calls him. Hello, fat. Anyways, that cartoon always cracked me up, and I always thought it was a great cartoon. And I quote it every once in a while. Let's just put it that way. In my everyday life. All right, Tony says, RJ, what are your opinions on gender swapped penguin? Again, all my information on this comes from Wes over at Thinking Critical. I really don't know very much about it. I am not into watching the cartoons. I watched the original Batman, the animated series when it came out so long ago in the, what was it, late 80s, early 90s? I don't even know. Because I was working on a farm at the time and the television was on during our lunch break. So we watched Batman. I don't know what else was on at that time. But anyways, yeah, it's just ridiculous. Ridiculous. If they want to make a new character, make a new character. I'm sorry, but I don't know very much about the situation, but I can tell you right now, it's not something that needs to be done. It just doesn't. Make a new character. Let's see. Scrolling down. Zach Dan has a comment here. The different kinds of staging shots do help the comic feel more dynamic. Agreed. 100%. Staging is something I always try to make sure that I have. Let's see, where's the staging shot? There it is. Have in my script in order to, excuse me, in order to make sure that the artist has some idea of what I'm thinking about and we can be on the same page. It's very important. Again, some of the times, depending on what artist I'm working with, I say, Renzo, go to town. This needs to be a different perspective. Find me one that works. Things like that. So, I'm not always 100% telling my artist what to do, but it's something that has to constantly be brought up. The fact that you need to have a different staging here. And I do that all the time. If I don't say, okay, we need a worm's eye view, we need an action shot. If I don't put that at the first of the panel, I say, Renzo, Nick, somebody I'm working with, Martin, we need to change perspectives here, find out what works best. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. George says, look how simple it is drawn, yet there is a lot of detail. What happened to that type of art style? What happened to that type of art style, George, is the fact that you have these artists who, excuse me again, who just can't get the work done on time. They just can't. And you have these artists putting in obscure details of things that don't actually matter. Again, they're prompted by the comic companies to do so right now, to put in completely superfluous, detailed things that should not be there, quite literally. If I could, I would pull up an example. I can't remember what book it was from. It might have been from one of the, I think it might have been from one of the Fantastic Four books within about 2-3 years ago, but it could have been one of the Women of Marvel books. But anyways, they had one of the Power Pack girls, and she was laying on a couch, eating chips, and you had the whole mess around her and all this kind of stuff. Excuse me, I have to clear my throat. But the thing was that all of these tiny little inconsistent things in the background were to give you some idea of her lifestyle. and they did that on purpose. No, you need to get good at the fundamentals. You need to know that you're drawing an inside space and it has a couch and drapes and a footstool. Yeah, if you know what you're doing and you can get those fundamentals down, and then you can just rip through the page and make sure that you get the entire thing done. Again, we're talking about cartoons here, so it's a little excuse me, a little easier for cartoonists sometimes when they do the cartoony style than what you're going to get within a comic book. But that's what happens to a lot of the details. They're focused on the wrong details right now, and you have artists that are told to focus on the wrong details. That's part and parcel of what has happened to it. Excuse me. Let's see. Sound Engraver says, I like how a hand or foot goes beyond the panel boundaries, uses good use of space. Yes. That's one of the things that Nick X is very good at. We do, and Jim O'Reilly as well. The two artists for Crom the Destroyer, which we're still working on. I apologize to everyone who ordered Crom the Destroyer. We're still trying to crank out those art pages. We're almost done. And I think I will be giving some kind of extra to anybody who backed Crom the Destroyer, expecting it, last December and didn't get it. But that's one of the things both of those artists are good at. And it's something that, I don't know, Sound Engraver, you would probably find this in particular very interesting. I talked about this before. There's a very old, I think it was might have been 1800s or earlier at the very minimum. An old painting of Saint Bridget. And Saint Bridget, if you know the story of Saint Bridget, an Irish saint, she was carried by angels from one place to another. But within this picture, this painting of Saint Bridget, she's asleep during that time, and she's being carried by two angels from this one place to another. And you have a panel boundary on the actual painting itself within the painting, and then you have the feet and the hands and a little bit of the wings of the angels going over the panel borders a little bit here and there, which is actually to show, as the artist says, the transcendent nature of the angels, because they're not limited by the boundaries of our reality, which I always thought was a beautiful painting and a beautiful description of that painting. And I always think about that when I have panels that are broken in some way. They have to have some kind of heavy weight to them in order to do that. Action that is not contained within the panels, actions that are not contained within the page, all that kind of stuff. And I always makes me think of St. Bridget. Let's see, scrolling down. Magma Moose is here. How you doing? Good to see you here. Private Eye, I'm not sure if I gave you a shout out before, but great to see you here. Yes, you can, this guide that I'm showing you here, like I said, it's only 7 pages, and it's for free. You can get it on the Internet Archives. If you go and Google, what is the name of the, let's see, I'll give you the address here. You go to the usarchives.org/19/items/comic strip artist kit, which all of those are broken up by a dash, comic dash strip dash artist dash kit /comic dash strip dash artist dash kit. And this is the PDF version of it. So it's .pdf. This is the one I'm looking at. They have several different versions of it on there that you can download and view if you want to view, or download if you want to download. Let's see. Greg always has interesting comments. Let's see what Greg has to say. People lost 1,000 years of skill in the last 100 years. Peter from Woodland Escape said a friend of his sold. Okay. Peter from Woodland Escapes said a friend of his said to him, people have lost 1,000 years of skill in the last 100 years. Yeah. I don't know if I talked about this on this channel or on comic book, making comics fun again before, but there's something interesting, very interesting on that very topic going on within Japan right now. It's the fact that the Japanese have always been able to make spectacular wooden structures, and we're talking large and small. So we're talking furniture and we're talking buildings out of wood. So carpenters within Japanese culture, they were prized possessions, and they passed down their knowledge, and they were able to make things which normally you would not be able to make as just a normal everyday carpenter. And the thing is that how they did that was because it took a lifetime's worth of learning, and then they got to that master stage where they could do these things. But the problem is right now that with public school taking your children away in order to teach them the public schools things for, I don't know how long school lasts within Japan, 12 years, 13 years. It depends on what country you're in, whether or not they go to 12 or 13, sometimes even more, and then possibly off to university. But the whole point is that even if you get a kid who simply just goes through the normal public school, by the time he's done with public school, he's already wasted so many years of his life not learning the skills he needs to be a good carpenter that he will never get to that stage. And they are losing completely the ability of Japanese carpenters to do the spectacular things they have for thousands of years. They're just losing it. So yeah, that this is happening for many different reasons in many different ways throughout our world right now. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. Grinning is here, says late to the party, but so far the last few minutes have been golden. Well, glad to hear that someone's enjoying it. Pedro is here. How you doing, Pedro? Pedro says, dang it, at least I'm not that late. Oh, John is here. John, I was going to tell you to go to bed, John, but you don't need to go to bed. So John is here, everybody. If you are not subscribed to John's Longbox, please do so. John's Longbox is a great, he has some great interviews up there now. Not only just great showcases of old comic books, but he's been talking to some very bigwig old comic book professionals over the last little while. Just off the top of my head, I talked about the JDM Mateus. He had Jim Shooter. He talked to Mike Millar, a whole bunch of people that some of them I can't even think about. But yeah, great interviews, John. I love the fact that your channel is growing in that way. So yeah, everybody go on over to and subscribe to John. Give him a boost. Let's see. George says, this is why John Byrne is the GOAT, because he draws things in the background. Yeah, I mention this every probably 4 to 6 weeks, but yeah, I always remember that. I think it was, I don't know, to me in my mind it's probably issue 2 or 3, it might be later, of She-Hulk, where he drew the invading armada of aliens in a giant double page spread, and he put a little caption box in the corner saying, drink this in, I'm not doing it again. So yeah, everybody talks about prickly John Byrne, but he is a beautiful artist. Spectacular. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. We have some crosstalk in the chat. Let's see if I can see. Zach Dan, one for me. Zach Dan says, talking about the fundamentals, make one a fundamentalist. Okay. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. A lot of people talking about, I don't know, Scrooge McDuck, I think, in the chat. Let's see. George says, it has a comment for me or question for me. George says, RJ, after the stream, in the bathroom, behind the toilet, or in your kitchen, that's where they like to hide. Talking about the cricket. Yes, the darn cricket. No, my little studio, if we want to call it that, is the second floor of my tool shed. It's not really a tool shed. It's a construction area, because I like to do carpentry stuff. So I do that on the first floor of my building that I built specifically for that. And I built a second floor where I do all my packaging and my recording and everything else. And I have a lot of boxes up here full of comics and boxes to send away and all that kind of stuff of books that need to go out. So yeah, I'm sure he's behind one of those boxes somewhere. Scrolling down. Oh, thank you very much, Sound Engraver, with a $2 super chat. So, excuse me. Also, give a shout out to Sound Engraver. She has a great channel talking about, well, she's changing some of what her channel is about, but she talks about a lot of the things I talk about on my normal Saturday live streams, but with more of a concentration on things like music, stuff like that. So, Sound Engraver has a great channel. Another one I suggest. Oh, excuse me. Another one I suggest everyone goes over and subscribes to. Let's see. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Oh, George says, for supposedly one of the best hand-to-hand fights, he throws her at the controls of the howitzer. I have no idea where that conversation came from. You must. So I'm going to leave that one be. Tony says, RJ, what are your favorite H.G. Wells adaptations? Quite honestly, it's Hackney, but its favorite adaptation is The War of the Worlds. Why? Because, again, I got into radio plays when I was a kid. Well, they were long dead by the time I was a kid, but my local public library had records, a lot of records. This was back before they had anything else besides records to loan out at the library, and it was a huge library. So this is the only library around that had records, and they had a lot of old radio plays on record, and the original H.G. Wells War of the Worlds that was done by what's his name? That was done for radio, that caused the panic within the US when he did it for radio. I'm sure someone's shouting at me in the comments telling me exactly who it is right now, but I can't go to the bottom without losing my place. But yeah, I listened to that and it just captured my mind. It's amazing, quite honestly. So it always made that my favorite H.G. Wells story. Scrolling down. Let's see. People talking about the penguin again. I don't know a lot about the situation, so I can't talk about very much about it. Warren the Archangel, how you doing, Warren? I don't think I said hello to you yet today. Warren says, old school Disney comic books are the GOAT. It's very interesting to see the guiding processes that's sure to be useful. Yeah, that's one of the things too. After I read this, when I came across it after I read it, I just Googled, a lot of old comic books for not just Disney, but there were a lot of others, Richie Rich and Casper the Ghost and all these other kinds that were coming out at the same time. Tried to pick out some of the fundamentals that they were using within these things and try to see a lot of what they were doing. It's always interesting to do that. And yeah, the old Disney books are like that. And I'm sure that someone like, I don't know, Clownfish TV could actually speak a lot more to this sort of thing than I did, because he actually worked for the Walt Disney Company doing comic books for them. I think it was in the 90s. So it would be interesting to talk to him to see how far these techniques actually carried on into the future. Warren also says, to be fair, among the earliest comics I remember reading back in my childhood. Agreed. Same with me, Warren. They were the ones that were just torn to shreds. Let's see. Zach Dan says, some of the extra detail is nostalgia baked while they mock the original in the story. Yeah, true. And sometimes people just are too obsessed with Easter eggs. Let's see. Tony says, RJ, are you a fan of Carl Banks or Don Rosa? Not particularly. Let's see. Scrolling down. Grinning says, hey, RJ, just got your Valiant Heroes set in New Mexico. Have not had the time to open it yet, though. Just wanted to let you know. Great to know. I'm glad. I don't know. You might be one of the few people, if it sounds like you got the 3 floppies, because you can get the Valiant Heroes as 1 graphic novel or 3 floppy comics, because each of the floppies are standard length, and I just combined them into a graphic novel. Unfortunately, even though I loved holding those floppies in my hand, I don't know if I'm actually going to ever do that again, just because it's a bit of a headache in the printing to get it done, and it's more expensive just to break it up that way. I wish I could. I wish I could do it again. Maybe in the future I will, but who knows, Grinning, you might be one of the few people to actually get one of those floppies from my company. It may be a thing that I only do once. I hope not, but it may be. But glad to hear you got your books. Let's see. Scrolling down. Sound engraver. I knew you would enjoy that. She says that's a cool concept about the angels transversing beyond the boundaries of the art piece. Scrolling down. Oh, I thought I was getting to the bottom of the chat, but I have not. I've hit my hour, but so I don't like to stay too much longer than an hour. So we'll see if we can get through a little more and get to the end of the chat with a little more speed. Let's see if we have any more comments for me. I think this is a good comment just to pull up. Elias says, Roman concrete, one of the current ideas is that the powder was coarse so that it would slowly release and auto-heal the structure as it deflected. Anyways, I think that there's conversation going on in the chat about lost arts, like I was talking about within Japanese carpentry right now, and comic books and all. It's been so many things happening throughout history. Unfortunately, let's try not to lose. That's why I do these streams and cover the things that like I'm covering today. Let's try not to lose these to history. Let's try and make sure that we can pass these on at the very least in a small way, and make sure that they live on, because I think comic books is, as a medium, never going to die, not for a long time at the very least, because visual storytelling and a story which you have it in words next to it is a unique thing that has developed over the last 100 years plus, and is a spectacular part of the last century's creation. Let's see. Scrolling down. Yes. Orson Welles. Thank you very much, Michael. Orson Welles, when he did the H.G. Wells, War of the Worlds, right? Random is here. How you doing? Random says, came in late. Disney should refocus on what made them a company in the first place. Fun cartoons lift people up. Exactly what I'm talking about, Random. Yeah, go back to the fundamentals. Scrolling down. Pedro, how you doing, Pedro? Pedro says, RJ, you never watched a cartoon, video game, or movie that made you think, wow, if this based on a comic, novel, or book, now I need to read it? No, Pedro, quite honestly, let's talk early 80s to mid 90s. I bought almost every last comic from mainstream comics that came into the comic shop. I spent massive amounts of money. I honestly did. And basically only a few things would get thrown out here and there. I would walk in thinking on every comic book day that I would get everything, and I would flip through everything that was on my pile and just throw some of them out because I was thinking, okay, no, I don't need that. That looks ridiculous. But still, so it was the opposite way around to me. I never watched a cartoon or a video game or a movie and think, wow, if that's based on a comic, I need to read it. I always read the comics first, and then it was, let's see how they screw this up by making a cartoon out of it or making a movie out of it or making something else, because yeah, back in the 80s they would just screw things up. Let's see. Tony also asks, I can't even pronounce his name, so I can tell you right now that no, I don't think so. Unfortunately, let's just put it this way. One of my friends had made this comment about me a while ago and said that names just are like, I don't know, They just bounce off of me. Someone tells me their name and I just forget it 2 seconds later. So if you're telling me a name, I can't picture the work of someone just based on their name. Very few people I can do that for. I'm very visual. 95% of my brain is visual. So I would need a visual reference in order to know if I actually even encountered this person before in my life. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Ryan, I think this is for me, says, do you prefer reading a superhero story that has a lot of panels on every page or one that is full of splash pages and 2-page spreads with only a few pages that have multiple panels? No, the image style, which is what you're talking about there in the second part, which is the splash pages and the 2-page spreads. No, I never liked the image style. I always liked the panels and the lots of panels, because you can build drama much better with the different kinds of panels and putting in more panels. I like the Neil Adams form of storytelling, which uses your panel structure and your number of panels on your page to maximize the storytelling. I think the image guys drew in too much, as I always say, graphic design, which is where they got the idea of the splash pages and the double splash pages. And that kind of graphic design that they used was so specific to the time in the 80s where they were operating within, and then the early 90s, that I don't even think it is relevant anymore. So yeah, I don't think those panels, I don't think those giant panel books are very good storytelling. I just don't. Let's see, scrolling down. Oh, Zach Dan says he got both floppies and graphic novels. I do remember packaging yours, Zach Dan. I do remember packaging it because I get to see. One of the things I love about doing the packaging myself, although I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it again, is the fact that I get to see some of the people that I interact with. I get to see, who's buying my books, and I get to see exactly what's going on with what sells and who likes what and all that kind of stuff, which I find is really helpful, honestly. Let's see. Elias says, I haven't finished Valiant Heroes yet. It takes me about 3 hours to listen to a 30-minute podcast usually, but Kit Fox is my favorite part so far. Yeah, Renzo just pours his heart and soul into his characters and doing the Kit Fox character, which he loves because he loves Batman and Robin. Those are the first books. I think Chuck Dixon's Batman and Robin, he said, were the first things he picked up when he was a kid as comic books. So he loves those kinds of characters. And yeah, he pours his heart and soul into those books, which, is great for me and for you. Michael says, RJ, have you watched Code Geass? No, I haven't watched the entire thing. I know what the basic storyline is. I have seen a few here and there, but it's not something that I watched all the way through. It's probably something I should watch. It is something that I would watch if I had the time. John, you're still here. And John says, are the crickets telling anyone else to kill? Yeah, it's telling me to kill it. I need to kill it. Let's see. Grinning says, yep, I just opened it. 3 floppies and a book and the poster. Very nice. Very good. Very good. One of the things too about doing this myself is that I think I'm going to completely revamp the packaging. I tried to do hard cardboard, excuse me again, cardboard, to make sure that everything stays protected. But I think there are different ways. I'm looking at different stuff where different things are being shipped from other parts of the world. And I'm looking at some of their packaging going, hey, wait a second, that would work spectacularly with what I have. I got to order some of these things and try them out. And it would make it much more presentable, by the way. So that's one of the things I want to do. Scrolling down. Tony, I don't know if you meant to say RJ or if you're talking to someone else who's RC, but it says, what are your thoughts on Mark Hamill telling Trump fans to go force themselves at a con recently? I really, really don't pay much attention to actors, let alone actors who, honestly, I'm sorry, but if you're going around to Comic Cons and that's your bread and butter, and perhaps you should focus more on your craft, huh? Let's see. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Scrolling down. I don't know what someone is talking to Sound Engraver about a few things, but I'm not sure what exactly that is, if it has to do with me. Alias says, and a lot of the young guns weren't alive to know that it was better back in the day. Well, I don't know. Interesting conversation going on there, but I'm not sure exactly what they're talking about. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Scrolling down, scrolling down. See if there's any more comments for me, because everybody's having a good talk in the chat. Samuel, I think, is talking to me. He says, I think there's a pacing to panel types that depends on where the story is. Exactly. That's your Neil Adams way of telling story through panel structure and panel shape. That's exactly what he talks about over and over again. He is the master of that, the creator of that, really, for the modern times. To tell story through pacing, and to tell pacing and to ramp up or slow down the pacing through panel structure is one of his great achievements. Let's see. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Question mark. How you doing? Says, just got in. The artist kit is helpful. I have seen Wally Wood's. We're talking about Woody Woodpecker earlier, so that's why my mind went there. Wally Wood's 22 panels that always work. Same kind of idea. Okay. I will. Yeah, that's something I actually have to look up. Thank you very much, question mark, for bringing that up to me. Wally Wood. Yes, I got to go look that up. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Oh, Honduran. How you doing? Honduran says, RJ, end of the chat. And he has the last comment. Well, thank you very much, Honduran. Thank you very much. I've been talking for at least an hour and 12 minutes now. So I've gotten to the end of the chat. Thank you very much, everyone, for showing up. And hopefully you've got a few things out of what I've been talking about, at the very least, some entertainment maybe out of it, and maybe a little bit of, a little bit of knowledge, even if you're just a comic reader, in order for you to say, this panel would work better here, this book would work better there. Why? Because even if you're a comic reader and you're not a comic creator, with social media right now, the fact that we can talk to everybody who is making comics, if they're open to you talking to them, and hopefully open to some constructive criticism, you can point these things out to them and say, hey, this, that, and the other thing. And maybe they have a reason for it, and maybe they don't. But that's the beauty of being a fan of indie comics these days, and the ability to poke your nose into the life of people who are creating these things and say, hey, guess what, there's a better way to do this. And I think that's a bit of what we all need to do. How you do it and your tone, that's up to you, but I think it's something that needs to be done. So again, hopefully you've gotten something out of this. I want to thank everybody for showing up in the chat, everybody who is going to be showing up later. Thank you very much for listening to me rant about comic panels and everything else, staging and what makes comics great. It is a passion of mine, and it just grows and grows over the years. And I want to once again just remind everyone that links are in the description for my 3 graphic novels. The very last copies of, I should mention this. The very last copies of The Valiant Heroes are going out now. I had a slight problem. I should have been done about 2 weeks ago, shipping everything. But I realized that, my printer actually prints off all the labels for me, and I just download the PDF or the Excel file from Indiegogo, and it gives you the basic what you need for labels, and then my printer prints them off. But for some reason, and I don't know what it is, because it is random. I cannot figure out any pattern whatsoever, but there was about 50, not quite 50, maybe 40, 45 labels that just didn't get printed off. I don't know where they came from. It's not a missing sheet because they're random names here and there. I don't know why, but those people who for some reason didn't get printed off labels, you'll probably get your book shipped within the next week or two, and you'll probably see handwritten labels on it. That's why you have handwritten labels. I know it looks very unprofessional, but just for anybody who is still waiting for their book, that's probably the reason why. But we're fulfilling the last of those orders right now. So if you want to get your copy of the Valiant Heroes while they're still hot, you can click on those links in the description and go on over and get yourself a copy. You can also get a copy of the first book, which is the Valiant Heroes, along with that when you order. It's a perk that you can get separate, or you can add it on at the end, along with all of the posters and everything else. I think we'll probably do some more cards next time when we do Thomas Valiant #2, which we're gearing up to do. And also the link is there for Crom the Destroyer. And I'm going to play the short 44-second outro Crom the Destroyer trailer right now. And again, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for showing up. And I will see you all maybe on Saturday and hopefully back here next Wednesday for Comic Book Team Up. All right. I'll see you all later. Bye.
No matter how many wars you fight, no matter how much blood you shed, no matter how much rage you loose, no matter how many demons you face, no matter how many companions you lose, no matter if our kingdom falls, I know that you will return to me in honor.